Welcome back, folks. We are here for your question about work. And for those who are joining us for the first time, I'm Roy, and I work with Min, and we are startup investors in the future of work.
And we are answering your questions about team building, I guess. Yesterday we were talking more about how do you get somebody amazing to work for you. And then today is a slightly different, more tactical question, and one that we get often from early stage founders, which is, when you're a small company founder, when should you hire a CFO?
Yes. So first, 2 words of warning. One is I want to talk about the role of somebody doing your financial work and what does a CFO actually do. And I say this not as a financial professional. So if we have any financial professionals who want to get in the comments and correct me, that's how we learn. That's, again, this is not advice. It's just, 2 people's perspectives. And the second is that it varies a lot depending on what kind of business you are in. So if you are in a business that is extremely financially complicated, you're buying components of hardware and you need to hold them for a while before you sell them. Most financial complexity has to do with the timing of when you spend things. One of the reasons why we love software businesses is because it's so easy. You have staff, you hire them, their consultants are full-time employees, maybe you pay your cloud computing bill, and other than that, you got like kind of no costs usually, or very low costs, and then the revenue comes in, and the complexity comes in around when you recognize revenue. So it varies a lot depending on the type of business. That's it. In the beginning, set aside the title of CFO. Like if you have a business co-founder who wants to call themselves CFO and handle the financial stuff, great. But do you need to hire out for that? No. You need to get 2 tasks done with respect to your financials. One is you need to do the accounting, which is to know how much money you have and on what it is being spent. And the other is you need to do the planning, which is to know how much money you will need, what you can expect for the future, and how much money you will spend. In the accounting world, you call that second function FP&A, financial planning and analysis. And in the beginning, the founders can do that themselves. In fact, the very best founders know how much cash they have in the bank. They often check that bank account on a daily basis. They're literally looking at it. They might close the books themselves the first couple of times, meaning look at the end of the month of how much they've spent on what, and they might use, pick your software solution, QuickBooks or something like that. There's always active chat in our founder Slack about this. And then where it usually begins is and they might build the first version of a financial model for the business themselves. And that's something we plan to write about in the future about how to do that. Then the question is, well, when do you add someone? When and what do you add? And this follows the principle we've talked about before of hiring by cell division, which is whenever you believe that the least valuable thing you're doing with your time is whatever your accounting administration is or updating the model, that's when you want to start getting help with it. And the 2, oftentimes you get help in different places. So you might have a service, and there are plenty of software services that do this, and fractional CFOs that you can go to, meaning you hire somebody part-time that mostly focuses on accounting. Sometimes you might get somebody, either a contractor or a person to do a project, who might help you with your financial model. Sometimes you'll find the 2 together, but it's useful to think of them separately, and you'll usually have a vendor for a little while. And then you'll realize you actually need a little more command over what you've got. And that can typically happen once you have real revenue or dozens of people on staff. Real revenue meaning like low single-digit millions of revenue. And then you might hire your first financial person who might full-time do that. They might still manage a vendor on the outside, but usually it comes relatively late down the line. Now, again, this varies a ton depending on what industry you're in. If you're in an industry where you're buying lots of components, there's hardware complexity or timing about the trickiness of when you the rules of when you recognize revenue versus when you take cash, then you might do it earlier. If you're in like a standard software SaaS business, it might come later. But the easier your financials are to manage, the less you have to focus on it. So that's generally how I think about what the on-ramp looks like. And it's really hard to give when you hit X in revenue, you need a blank, because it varies depending on the business model of what you're in.
Yeah, I was going to say that element of in some ways at the beginning, finding someone who might be more familiar with your business model and then actually learning to build the first financial model yourself. It's actually probably a really good way to get a handle on all of your finances before outsourcing that to somebody else.
Totally. And it's one reason why having angel investors who are founders of comparable companies can be so valuable, because even more than a VC, they know. And it's why it is a reason why having a community of founders, whether because you participate in a program or you get investment from a founder, from an investor like us, or in some other way, it's really powerful. Because then, I mean, how often in our founder Slack are people chatting about, like, did you use Bench or Pilot, whatever? They'll like riff on all that stuff. So
yeah,
that's
and
what
so
we
if you
got.
have any, so we'll share a link to actually the Cell Division post. I think it's a helpful way to think about when to hire somebody full time for a particular function, and when to just do it yourself for a little bit. And then if you have other questions that you want us to answer, drop us a comment on LinkedIn or Twitter, wherever you find us.
Yeah, we got a good one earlier today.
We did, yeah. And so we'll be back tomorrow.
To be continued.